The chamber is open and full of whispers.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive timelines, members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. It is not yet 6 in the morning, the day after the battle ended, and the Great Hall still smells of stone dust, and extinguished candles, and something underneath both that has no name and does not need one. 51 white shrouds. 4 long tables pushed back against the walls. The enchanted ceiling shows a sky the color of old pewter, the sun attempting Scotland and failing. The living sleep where they fell. George Weasley is slumped against the far wall, with his knees drawn up and his head tilted toward his left shoulder, toward the space where someone used to be. His face in sleep has found something close to peace. His hand rests open on the stone floor, palm up, as though waiting to receive something back. Under a white shroud near the center of the hall, 2 people lie side by side. The shroud over Remus Lupin is slightly crooked, the hem not quite aligned. Someone straightened it once, and it shifted again, and no one came back to fix it. Nymphadora Tonks's shroud is perfectly straight. That detail means nothing. It means everything. A boot moves through the hall. Black. Dragonhide. Worn at the left heel in the particular way of someone who pivots left under pressure. It moves with the careful economy of a person who learned to walk silently in the dark, during a year when silence was the difference between living and not. Harry Potter moves through his dead world and does not cry. He used all of that somewhere in the forest, in the hour before dawn the previous night, in the quiet between turning a stone 3 times and putting it down in the earth and walking toward a green light that did not kill him. Whatever was left he used in the battle after. He is empty in the specific way of a vessel that has been completely drained and has not yet begun to understand what it will hold next. He reaches the window. The glass is cracked in a long diagonal line from upper left to lower right, the kind of break that happened during the night, and that nobody noticed because there were larger things breaking. Through it, Scotland. Grey hills. A lake that reflects nothing yet because the sky has nothing to give. He watches the sun try to rise. It does not succeed. He hears a second set of footsteps behind him. Not stealthy, just quiet in the way of someone who has learned the same lesson about silence, but arrived at it through different circumstances. The footsteps stop beside him. Hermione hands him a cup of tea without a word. It is warm. He does not ask where she found it. She found it because she is Hermione, and Hermione finds things. And this has been true for 7 years, and will presumably remain true for however many come after. They stand at the window together. The sky actually changes while they stand there. The pewter lightens by 1 degree toward gray. Then 2. They'll come for us, Harry says. I know. Kingsley's a good man. Yes. A pause. She wraps both hands around her own cup. But good men have bad men standing close to them and don't always know it yet. That's the problem with good men. They extend the benefit of the doubt. Silence. The lake outside catches the first suggestion of light and gives it back reluctantly. I thought about it in the night, Hermione says. While everyone else was, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what happens after, because someone always has to. What did you think? That there's something in Dumbledore's office. She does not look at him when she says it. She keeps her eyes on the window, on the gray hills, on the sky that is slowly becoming something other than night. I don't know how I know. I just know. I think we need to go find it. Harry looks at the cup in his hands, at the tea he is not drinking, at the reflection of the cracked window in its surface. Now, before anyone wakes up, he sets the cup down on the stone ledge. She does the same, precisely next to his, handles aligned. They move through the hall together, past the sleeping, past the still, past George's open hand, past the shroud that is slightly crooked, past the 4 Weasley children sleeping in a cluster near the Gryffindor table, with the particular closeness of people who need to be able to reach each other in the night. And in the center of that cluster, Ginny, on her side, one arm extended slightly as though she fell asleep mid-reach. Hermione pauses, finds a scrap of parchment in her bag. She always has parchment. She writes in quick small letters, "Gone to Gringotts. Do not let the ministry into the castle until we return. H and H." She places it on the stone next to Ginny's extended hand. Then she straightens, and they walk on. Dumbledore's office has repaired itself by roughly 40% overnight. The door rehung. The largest of the cracked windows has knitted along the upper third. The silver instruments on the side tables have righted themselves, and several of them are doing things that instruments do when they believe no one is watching. The portrait hangs slightly askew. The man inside it sits with the particular stillness of someone who has been waiting a very long time for a door to open. "You're earlier than I expected," Dumbledore says. "I had thought noon, perhaps later." "We couldn't sleep," Harry says. "No." The painted eyes move between the two of them with an expression that is not quite sorrow and not quite pride, and is in fact both of those things layered one over the other until they become something without a simple name. "You wouldn't have. There is an envelope in the second drawer on the left. I sealed it 7 years ago, when you were no older than 11, though I could not have told you then what was in it, or why I felt the need to write it at all. I have been waiting, with a feeling I did not expect, to give it to you." "What feeling?" Hermione asks. "Relief," Dumbledore says, "that you are both here to receive it. I confess I was not entirely certain which of you would walk through that door first, or whether the other would follow." The envelope is there. Heavy cream parchment, wax seal in 2 overlapping crests, the Order's phoenix and the 4-quadrant design of the Hogwarts founders. The handwriting on the front is looping and precise and unmistakably his. "To Harry, and to the one who has always stood beside him. Open only when the war is won and the Ministry's shadow falls." Hermione reads faster than Harry, 2 sentences ahead, then 4. Her expression moves through alert to the specific look she gets in the moment before a decision consolidates, not the moment of decision itself, but the moment just before, when all the pieces are in position and she is checking them one last time. "The Charter of 1294, she says." Her voice is level. "I've read references to it. Academic contexts, mostly footnotes in Goblin law treatises that contradicted each other. I thought it was theoretical, or possibly apocryphal." "Goblin law rarely is theoretical," Dumbledore's portrait says, mildly. Whatever the Wizarding Academy may wish to believe about it, Harry finishes reading. He looks at the letter for a moment longer than necessary. Then he looks at her. "If we do this, the Ministry cannot arrest you," Hermione says. "That's not what I was going to ask." She looks up. 7 years of knowing him has made her very good at waiting for the actual sentence. "If we do this," Harry says, I'm not asking you to." "Harry." The patience in her voice is not impatience wearing a costume. It is the real thing. "I have run through a burning forest for you. I have been tortured and said nothing. I spent a year in a tent eating whatever we could find, keeping you alive while you kept me alive. And neither of us ever—" She stops. She recalibrates with the precision of someone who has prepared for a great many conversations and recognizes that this is not one of them. "The question is not whether I'm willing. The question is whether you understand what you're asking. I'd be asking you to be High Regent of Wizarding Britain. That too." The silver instruments turn slowly in the background. The fire in the grate has gone low, but not out. "Hermione, will you—" "Yes," she says, before he finishes. Then, after a beat, with the careful deliberateness of someone who believes in precision, "also yes to the other thing, in case that required saying separately." Harry looks at her for a long moment, and then carefully, the way things are rationed when there is only so much of them left, something almost like a smile. "Right then," he says. "Let's go to Gringotts." They leave the office, they leave the castle, they apparate from the gates in the grey early hour, side by side as they have done 100 times, and neither of them looks back at Hogwarts. Not because they don't want to, because if they do, one of them might stop. On the stone floor of the great hall, in the space between sleeping and waking, Ginny Weasley's fingers close around a piece of parchment. She does not wake. Not yet. Gringotts Bank is already open when they arrive, not long after 7 that same morning. Goblins do not observe human morning hours. The bronze doors are polished, the chandeliers throw gold light across white marble floors. Behind the long counter, a dozen goblins work in the silence of people who have worked through wars and their aftermaths for 1,000 years, and have found that the ledgers do not pause for either. Harry and Hermione push through the doors, and every goblin in the lobby stops. Not out of fear. The stillness is the rapid, collective recalibration of people who are very good at identifying when something historically significant has just walked through their door. Quills pause above parchment. Coins freeze mid-count. At the highest desk, behind steepled fingers, the head teller watches them cross the marble floor. His name is Brackar. He is ancient in the way that certain stones are ancient, not merely old but compressed, the weight of centuries inside him made dense and hard and unreadable. He lets them reach the desk before he speaks. Mr. Potter, Director Bracker. Harry uses the title. Something moves behind Bracker's eyes. Not surprise exactly, but the recalibration that comes after surprise, in the fraction of a second when surprise becomes interest. We need the deep vault ritual chamber. We need the Charter of 1294 retrieved from your archive. And before either of those things, I need to speak with you privately about the Sword of Gryffindor and about returning the Elder Wand to its rightful resting place once our business here is finished. Bracker's expression fractionally sharpens. You possess the Elder Wand. I do. Today, not after today. Bracker's office has no chairs for visitors. Goblins make wizards stand. Not an accident, not rudeness. A statement clearly communicated without words. And the fact that Harry doesn't ask for a chair tells Bracker something. Hermione stands beside him, bag over one shoulder, reading the room completely and quickly without appearing to. Harry says the thing. The Sword of Gryffindor was taken from your vault. By us. We needed it to end the war, and I'm not going to construct a justification for that. Goblin law holds that objects made by goblin hands return to goblin custody. I am acknowledging that here, on record, as Lord Potter. The sword belongs to Gringotts. He places it on the desk. The blade catches the lamplight and holds it. I'm returning it. Today, before we ask you for anything. Bracker looks at the sword for a long time. His expression does not change. And in return, he says, carefully, nothing. We give it freely. A pause. Separately, and not connected to this, we would like to use your ritual chamber, and we would like you or a deputy to witness a legal proceeding under the Charter of 1294. You've separated the gift from the request. The sword deserves to be returned by someone who means it, not traded. The silence in the office has weight. Bracker looks at the sword, then at Harry, then briefly at Hermione, who holds his gaze without expression. Then Bracker inclines his head, not a bow, an inclination the angle of a person who does not bow to anyone, but has found, in this moment, a gesture adjacent to respect, without conceding the word itself. The ritual chamber is being prepared, he says. The charter is being retrieved. The Goblin High Elder will witness. The cart takes them down, past the known levels, past a section of the bank where the torchlight changes from amber to blue-white, and the temperature drops by degrees that aren't measured in anything human. The sounds of the lobby vanish. The sounds of London vanish. They do not speak in the cart. There is nothing to say that the descent doesn't say more precisely. The ritual chamber is the oldest room in London. The ceiling disappears into darkness the blue-white flames don't reach. A stone altar stands at the center, and on it the Charter of 1294, a document written on something that is not paper and not parchment, that has existed for 700 years without fading, in an ink that shifts between black and gold depending on the angle. The Goblin High Elder stands behind the altar, present the way very old things are present, with the full weight of everything that came before them in the room alongside them. He does not greet them. He watches. Hermione reaches into her bag. She always has the bag, the same one she has carried since the previous September, holding the complete record of a year of impossible survival. She produces the resurrection stone and places it in Harry's palm. I went back into the forest for it, she says quietly. Before dawn, before I found you at the window. They should be here, just this once. The people who loved you. This is not a political transaction, and it shouldn't begin like one. You knew I'd left it there, on purpose. I knew, she meets his eyes. I'm not asking you to keep it, Harry, only to borrow it back for an hour. After this, I think it belongs in the ground again, where you put it. I already know that's what you'll decide. I just wanted it to be your decision, and not mine. Thank you, Harry says. He looks at the stone in his palm. Small, dark, the crack across its face from when he stepped on it in the forest. Still visible, the hallow symbol barely distinguishable from the surface around it. He turns it 3 times. The blue-white flames don't flare, they simply intensify, and in that intensified light 4 figures become present in the chamber, not solid, not absent, existing in the quality of light that falls between certainty and memory. James Potter sees his son and says nothing for 5 full seconds, looking at him the way a person looks at something they were told they would never see. Merlin's beard, Harry, he says finally. You look exactly like me. He has my eyes, Lily says. He He literally has my everything else, Lily. The eyes are all you're getting. Sirius is already looking at Hermione, taking in the bag, the composure, the way she stands beside Harry with the ease of someone who has stood beside him through things that would have separated most people. Bossy, he says. Brilliant. Argues like she's already read the counter-argument. A pause. Yeah, he would. Remus does not speak immediately. He watches both of them with the expression of a man who spent his life reading rules accurately, and is reading this one. You buried us properly, he says at last, to both of them, not specifying which burial he means, because he does not need to. We tried, Hermione says. You succeeded, Remus says. I would know. I have, as it happens, an unusual vantage point on the matter. The Goblin High Elder opens the charter and reads the required oath in gobbledygook. Low, even, without ceremony. Goblins understand that the most consequential things do not need decoration. Hermione has the translation memorized. She speaks it quietly beside Harry as the elder reads, and Harry listens to her voice and repeats each clause. I, Harry James Potter, Lord of the most ancient and noble house of Black, Lord of the ancient and noble house of Potter, heir of the Peveril line. He gets through it. His voice does not shake. When it is her turn, Hermione straightens slightly, not performing, simply collecting herself. I, Hermione Jean Granger, she says, who gives her name, her learning, and her vow freely. Not in exchange for safety, not in exchange for power. She pauses. In recognition of what has already been true, for as long as I can remember, and probably longer. The stone warms in Harry's hand. No explosion, no dramatic rupture. A pulse moves through the chamber, soundless, pressureless, the way a held breath is present in a room before it releases. The charter's ink shifts from its between color to pure gold all at once. Witnessed, the Goblin High Elder says. Recorded. Bound. The flames turn gold. James puts his hand near Harry's shoulder, present enough that Harry goes still. We are so proud of you, James says. All of it. Every part. Every single part. Lily turns to Hermione. She doesn't say much. She doesn't need to. Take care of each other, and they're gone. The chamber is blue-white again. The charter rests on the altar, its ink still gold, drying into permanence. The Goblin High Elder looks at it for a moment, then produces a seal from his robes. Iron, ancient, the original signatory mark of the Goblin High Council of that century, and presses it to the bottom of the document. The record is sealed. No ministry instrument, writ, or warrant holds authority over the persons named in this document from this hour forward. A pause. Gringotts congratulates the first pair. Before they leave, Harry turns the resurrection stone over once more, looks at it for a long moment, and gives it back to Hermione without being asked. Bury it where I left it, he says. Same spot. I don't want to know exactly where this time. Not even from you. She nods once, the matter already settled in her mind, and puts it away. There is a second matter, the wand that does not belong to him, resting in its makeshift brace since the small hours of the previous night, not kept so much as not yet put down. That evening Harry walks alone to the white tomb on the grounds, lifts the lid with a word, lays the elder wand back across its old owner's hands, and seals the marble again, repairing his own holly wand with one tap of its borrowed power before he returns it for good. It is the last thing he does that night before he sleeps, properly, for the first time since the battle. Harry looks at Hermione. She is looking at the charter, at her name in gold ink next to his, sealed and witnessed, and 700 years overdue. Right, she says quietly, to no one in particular. Let's go fix things. They do not use the fireplace. They apparate directly into the atrium of the ministry, not 3 hours after leaving Gringotts, a technical violation of protocols which is precisely the point. They arrive simultaneously, mid-stride, already in motion, the way people arrive when they have somewhere to be and have decided that the architecture of permission no longer applies to them. The atrium is half cleared. Emergency crews move debris from the far end where the battle left its marks on the marble. 2 oars are posted at the golden fountain, under reconstruction. A junior clerk pushing a trolley of files stops so abruptly that 3 folders slide off the top. Harry in black and gold, Hermione in silver and black, the judicial robe over the gown, the regent's pin at her collar catching the light. Together, they are not students, not the teenagers who ran through this same atrium years earlier trying not to die. They are something that has not existed before, and the atrium knows it before anyone in it has processed the thought. The silence spreads outward from the apparition point. Clerks stop, oars turn. A senior official freezes mid-step, and the parchment under his arm slowly fans toward the floor, and he doesn't reach to catch it. 3 oars reach for their wands. Harry's left hand is open at his side, visible, empty. His own wand sits in its sleeve untouched, the holly newly mended. He does not look at the oars who are reaching. He does not need to. The oars do not complete the motion. "Good morning," Hermione says into the silence, her voice carrying without effort. "We would like to see Acting Minister Shacklebolt. Please inform him that Lord Protector Potter and High Regent Potter Granger are here." Nobody moves for 3 full seconds. "Now would be good," Harry says. Pleasantly, Kingsley Shacklebolt has not slept. He receives them in the acting minister's office on the 8th floor. Thickness's old office, which still carries the faint atmospheric residue of prolonged dark magic use, the particular heaviness of a room where bad decisions were made with great confidence for a long time. Kingsley has not redecorated, he has not had time, and he is not, in any case, certain he is staying. He listens to the Charter of 1294 explained. He reads the Gringotts-sealed document that Hermione places in front of him, the Charter itself, certified copy, the Goblin High Elder's seal at the bottom in iron-pressed ink, her name and Harry's in gold. He reads it twice. He sets it down and sits back in his chair, with the expression of a man watching the tide come in from a beach he thought he understood. "Harry," he says, "Minister, you could have told me. We had a handful of hours between the battle ending and doing this. We judged the Goblin's timeline more secure than calling a meeting." Kingsley looks at Hermione, seated across from him with her hands folded, the patience of someone who has prepared for this conversation in detail and respects him enough to let it proceed at its natural pace. "Is this legally sound?" he asks. "Genuinely, the Charter predates the formation of the Ministry of Magic by roughly 300 years, Minister. It is not merely legally sound, it is legally senior." She produces a document, 17 pages, dense, annotated in 3 colors. "I wrote this on the cart ride into the vault. It addresses the 6 most likely procedural objections, including the argument that the Charter requires ratification under modern wizarding statute, which it does not, and the argument that Goblin Witness documents lack ministry standing, which they do hold under the sovereignty accords of the mid-18th century. I can walk you through it if you'd prefer." Kingsley looks at the 17 pages, then at her, then at Harry. "Of course you did," he says. A long silence. Outside the window, London moves in ignorance, entirely unaware that 3 floors below the surface of the city, the political structure of Wizarding Britain has just reorganized itself around 2 18-year-olds who haven't slept. What do you actually want, Hermione? Not the legal architecture. What do you want? The same things you want. A ministry that serves people instead of sorting them. A legal system that doesn't use blood as a credential. The difference is that we have the authority to accomplish those things in weeks rather than the years it would take through the existing committee structure. A pause. We are not here to remove you, Minister. We need the institution. We simply need it reformed faster than institutions typically permit. And the Wizengamot ratification vote. 30 days. We'll earn it. Kingsley is quiet for a long moment. Do you understand what you've done? Roughly. You've made yourself the most powerful person in Wizarding Britain. Us, Harry says. We've made ourselves. A pause. Yes. We know. They go to the atrium because the atrium has reporters. And they knew it would. 3 journalists from the Daily Prophet, a correspondent from Witch Weekly who was in the building covering the post-battle ministry response, and has found herself, by pure accident of timing, at the center of the largest story of the decade. A photographer already on his 7th shot. Percy Weasley materializes from a side corridor with a clipboard and a procedural objection he is beginning to suspect will not survive contact with the next 60 seconds. He moves to intercept them. Hermione stops walking. She turns to face him, takes a sealed copy of the Charter from her bag, and places it in his hands. "Read paragraph 6, she says. "We'll talk after." Percy opens it, finds paragraph 6. His expression moves through confusion to legal recognition to the discomfort of a man who has just discovered his objection was aimed at a door that is no longer there. Hermione turns back to the atrium. She does not move to a podium. She does not wait to be announced. She stands in the open center of the atrium floor, where everyone present can see her and speaks in a voice that does not ask for silence, but simply receives it. My name is Hermione Jean Potter Granger. I am the High Regent of Wizarding Britain, under the authority of the Charter of 1294, sealed this morning at Gringotts Bank, and witnessed by the Goblin High Elder. The joint regency of Potter Granger is now in effect. The photographers flash. The journalists write without looking down at their parchment. The Ministry of Magic continues to function. Ministry staff will report to their existing supervisors. The day-to-day operations of this institution proceed as normal. She pauses. One beat. However, as of this moment, all outstanding arrest warrants for Lord Protector Potter or myself are voided. Ministry officials who served the Thickness government in a capacity that contributed to documented harm. A list I have prepared and will deliver to the Department of Magical Law Enforcement within the hour, are suspended pending formal review. She reaches into her bag, produces the first decree, black ink on gold-edged parchment, signed by both names, the Gringotts seal at the bottom. And the Muggleborn Registration Commission is dissolved, effective immediately. Every file in its archive will be sealed. Every case on its record is expunged. Every person summoned before it will be contacted regarding compensation. That is our first decree. She holds it up. The photographer takes the photograph that will be on the front page of every wizarding publication in Britain within the day. Hermione Granger, holding a piece of parchment in the center of the ministry atrium, in silver and black, the regent's pin catching the light. Does anyone have an immediate procedural objection? From the back of the gathered crowd, Lord Greengrass opens his mouth. He is a tall man, well-dressed, with the composure of someone who has sat on the correct side of every conflict for 40 years by identifying it slightly faster than his peers. Hermione looks at him. The Charter's legal precedence over the Ministry's founding statutes is outlined in Goblin law, Wizard treaty law, and several Wizengamot precedents from the 14th and 15th centuries. Lord Greengrass, I encourage you to read them at your convenience. The Goblin translation is more thorough than the English. She smiles, not triumph, not cruelty, the smile of someone who prepared carefully for an objection and found it arriving exactly as anticipated. Lord Greengrass closes his mouth. In the back of the crowd, the Muggle-born ministry clerk who has worked in the Department of Magical Transportation for over a decade, arriving early and leaving late and keeping her ancestry unmentioned, presses her hand flat against her sternum, over her heart, and breathes. Nobody notices her do it. That is the point. The Wizengamot courtroom has bad history. This is not a metaphor. The stones themselves carry it, the specific cold of a room where people were chained to chairs and asked questions with predetermined answers, where the word hearing was used to describe proceedings in which nobody listened. The walls absorbed decades of fear and formality in equal measure and gave neither back. Hermione spends 2 days deciding whether to use this room. She decides yes, not despite its history. Because of it, some rooms need to be shown what else they can hold. She builds the case the way she builds everything. From the foundation up, each layer load-bearing before the next one is placed. She starts in Dumbledore's office, the morning after the ministry meeting. The pensieve sits on the desk, where it has always sat, full of memories that have been sitting in silver suspension since the night Dumbledore died, waiting for someone with the authority and the purpose to retrieve them. She decants them methodically, labels each vial in her precise small handwriting, dates, contexts, cross-references. She organizes them chronologically, not dramatically, chronologically because the truth of Severus Snape's life is more devastating in sequence than in any curated arrangement. You have to see the beginning to understand the end. You have to see the boy before you can see the man. She requests Harry's testimony. He agrees without hesitation, which she expected. He requests it be given under Veritaserum himself, which she did not expect, and which tells her something she files away carefully. You don't have to, she says. I know. He rolls up his sleeve for the Veritaserum administrator, an official from the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, who has the expression of someone performing a routine procedure who is beginning to realize it is not routine. But if I don't, someone will say I fabricated it. This way they can't. The chamber fills early. The press gallery is full. Rita Skeeter is in the third row, with her quick quotes quill already moving, and when Hermione enters, she finds Skeeter's eyes across the room and holds them for the duration of a single breath. The quill slows slightly. Skeeter looks away first. The Wizengamot members take their seats in the tiered rows. Several of them have the expressions of people who have been told what this hearing concerns, and have come with prepared skepticism ready to deploy. Several others have expressions that are harder to read, the careful blankness of people waiting to determine which direction the wind is moving before they choose a position. Hermione stands at the floor of the chamber, no notes in front of her. Everything she needs is in order in her mind, organized by the same system she has used since she was 9 years old and first understood that information, properly arranged, is a form of power that nobody can take from you. She begins. Severus Tobias Snape served as a double agent within Lord Voldemort's inner circle for the better part of 2 decades. He did this on the instruction of Albus Dumbledore, whom he served with absolute fidelity from the moment he understood the consequences of the information he had once provided to Voldemort as a young man. Information that led directly to the deaths of James and Lily Potter. No preamble, no establishment of atmosphere. The facts, in sequence, carrying their own weight. He spent years protecting Harry Potter, specifically and deliberately, while maintaining a cover that required him to be believed entirely by Voldemort himself. The quality of that cover was not incidental to the mission. It was the mission. A spy who is suspected as a dead spy and a failed one. Snape could not be partially convincing. He had to be completely convincing, which meant that everyone on the correct side of the war, including the people he was protecting, had to believe he was the enemy. She pauses. In the gallery, someone shifts in their seat. The sound is very loud in the quiet. He died in the shrieking shack the night before this past battle ended, killed by Voldemort's snake, alone, having ensured that the final piece of information Harry Potter required to end the war was transmitted. He died believing that no one alive knew what he actually was. He died having accepted that as the cost. Harry takes the stand. The Veritaserum is administered. 3 drops, clear, tasteless, the most honest thing in the room. He answers questions for the better part of an hour. His voice is level throughout. He describes the pensive memories. Lily Evans at 11, Snape's face when she called him her friend. The unbreakable vow Snape was bound by to Narcissa Malfoy, sworn in the spring before Dumbledore's death, to protect Draco and to finish what Draco could not. The specific conversation in which Dumbledore revealed that Harry himself was a Horcrux and must die, asked of Snape as the final terrible task of the whole arrangement, and Snape's reaction to that information, which Harry describes without elaboration, because the Veritaserum will not permit elaboration, only truth, and the truth is sufficient. He wept, Harry says. When Dumbledore told him what would be needed of Harry, he cast a Patronus. It was a doe. It had been a doe since Lily Potter died, and it never changed. The chamber is very quiet. He spent all those years being despised by every person he protected. He never asked for understanding. He never positioned himself for vindication. He did the job and accepted the cost of the job, and the cost was everything. A pause. I hated him for most of my time at school. I was wrong. He was the bravest man I knew, and I didn't know it until it was too late to tell him. The Veritaserum makes this impossible to doubt. Every person in the chamber knows it. The decree takes 11 minutes to draft, which is fast even for Hermione, because she has been drafting it in her head for 2 days. She reads it into the record herself. Severus Tobias Snape. All posthumous charges of murder and treachery are expunged from the ministry record. His name is entered into the Order of Merlin, first class, the first such award given by the Joint Regency, issued not as a political gesture, but as a correction of a factual omission. The citation reads, "For sustained courage under conditions of total isolation, in service of a mission that required the sacrifice of all recognition during his lifetime." The Hogwarts War Memorial, currently in commission with skilled goblin stonemasons, at Hermione's specific instruction, will carry his name in silver alongside the golden names of the battles fallen. Below his name, a second line, Severus Tobias Snape, soldier of both sides, servant of Neither, loyal unto death, and below that, at Harry's personal instruction, added to the decree in his own handwriting, in the margin, a third line, the bravest man I ever knew. H.J. Potter, Minerva McGonagall stands in the 3rd row of the Wisengamot chamber when the decree is read aloud. She has been standing since Harry began his testimony. She does not sit, because she cannot. She is not a woman who cries in public, and she does not cry now, but her hand comes up and presses flat against her mouth, with the pressure of someone holding something and that has been held in for a very long time. She knew. Parts of it. Enough to suspect. Not enough to be certain, and the uncertainty had lived in her chest for years, like something with edges. Now she is certain. She stands in the chamber where Severus Snape was tried in absentia, and branded a murderer, presses her hand against her mouth, and makes no sound at all. A few days later, the Daily Prophet runs the story across the full front page. Ron Weasley reads it at the kitchen table in the burrow, still in yesterday's clothes, a mug of tea gone cold beside his elbow. He reads the headline, the testimony summary, the line about the Patronus, the doe, unchanged for 16 years. He stares at the page for a long time. Outside the window, the Burrow's garden does the ordinary things it does in early summer. Gnomes active, garden birds disputing a section of hedge, the pale gold light of an English morning. Ron sets the paper down. He does not say anything. There is no one in the kitchen to say anything to. He picks it back up, reads it again, then sets it down, picks up his cold tea, and looks out at the garden. The world he went to sleep in is not the one he woke up in. He is only beginning to understand how much has changed, and who changed it, and what that means about everything he thought he knew. Harry's sweater has a hole in the left sleeve. He hasn't fixed it. He hasn't thought about it. He is wearing it anyway, with the particular indifference of someone who has spent a year concerned exclusively with staying alive, and has not yet recalibrated to a world in which the state of his clothing is a thing that could matter. Hermione's hair is down. They apparate into the Burrow's garden without announcement, because there is no correct way to announce this visit, and they both know it. The garden is exactly as it has always been, the gnomes active near the far hedge, the chickens indifferent. The grass long in the places Arthur Weasley's lawnmower doesn't reach, because Arthur Weasley finds Muggle lawnmowers fascinating, as objects, and suboptimal as tools. The house leans against the sky the way it always has, structurally improbable, entirely itself. The war did not touch this garden. That fact is its own kind of violence. Molly Weasley opens the door before they reach it. She looks at them, at the hole in Harry's sleeve, at Hermione's undefended hair, at the two of them standing in her garden in ordinary clothes, looking like what they actually are, which is two 18-year-olds who have not slept properly in days, and she pulls them both in at once, not sequentially, at once. One arm around each of them, the force of a woman who has already buried one child and has decided without discussion that the remainder of the people she loves are not going to stand at a distance from her if she has anything to say about it. She says nothing. She doesn't need to. The kitchen smells of something that has been cooking since the day before. Every surface has something on it. The wireless in the corner plays low, and nobody has turned it off, because turning it off would make the kitchen quieter than Molly can currently tolerate. Harry goes upstairs alone. George hasn't come out of his room. This is known, not discussed, the way the family has absorbed 100 things this week by adjusting around them, without naming them. Harry does not knock. He sits down on the floor in the corridor outside the door, back against the opposite wall, knees up, hands loose in his lap. He waits. 15 minutes pass. The floorboards settle the way old houses do. Downstairs, the wireless plays something with a slow tempo. The door opens. George sits down on the floor, on the other side of the door frame. They are not facing each other. Both look at the opposite wall, at a faded mark about 4 feet high that might be from a spell, or might be from one of the many years of Weasley childhood that happened in this house. Fred would have lost his mind, George says eventually, his voice testing whether speaking is still something he can do. Harry Potter, married, to Hermione Granger, he would have been completely non-functional. He would have tried to crash it. He would have tried to run it, gotten himself ordained by some dodgy owl post wizard church the night before, and shown up with a script. A pause with a shape to it. He's not here. No, I don't know what to do with that yet. Not a complaint. A report. Harry says, there's a memorial at Hogwarts. Hermione commissioned it from the Goblin stonemasons. Fred's name is first in the F section. Gold letters. A pause. She said the font should be larger for the people who made others braver, and I told her she should specify that in the commission, and she said she already had. George puts his head back against the doorframe, looking at the water stain near the light fitting that has been there since Percy's 2nd year, and that nobody has ever addressed. Okay, he says. One word with a great deal inside it. Okay, Harry says back. Ron is in the garden, flying lazy circles on a borrowed broom. Fred's broom, though neither of them will say that, about 15 feet up, not going anywhere, not practicing anything. Just moving, because being in motion is preferable to being still. He lands when he sees Harry. Not immediately. One more circle, as though finishing a thought. He doesn't look at Harry directly. He looks at the hedge, at the gnome watching them both with the suspicious attention gnomes bring to anything that might be worth biting. "So you're married," Ron says. "Yeah." To Hermione. "Yeah." "Right." He turns the broom in his hands. "I need a minute. To say something without being a prat about it. So just, give me a minute. Take it." The gnome loses interest and disappears into the hedge. A cloud moves over the sun and then off it again. "I liked her," Ron says. "You know that. I think maybe I don't know what I thought. I think I loved her in the way you love someone when they're the only girl your age you've had a proper conversation with for years. And I'm not certain that's actually the real thing, or just the shape of it." He stops, looking at the middle distance. "She makes sense with you. She always did. I don't know why I didn't see it. Maybe I wasn't looking at it straight." "Ron, I'm going to be fine. Not right now. But eventually." He looks up then, directly for the first time. "Are you? Actually? Yeah, I think so." "Good." He nods once, the nod of someone closing a door carefully rather than slamming it. Then, "You need to make me lord of something. I'm not standing around being plain Ron Weasley while you're both regents and whatever." Harry looks at him. "I'm completely serious. Hermione has a plan for everything. She definitely has a titles plan. I want to be on it. I'll talk to her. Lord Ronald Weasley. That's got something to it. I'll see what I can do. I want it in writing." Hermione finds Ginny in the kitchen. Molly has gone into the garden. She goes into the garden when she needs to be somewhere the wireless isn't. And so it is just the two of them. Ginny at the kitchen table with her own copy of the first decree in front of her. Turning it over in her hands the way someone handles an object they are still deciding how to feel about. Hermione sits down across from her. She does not begin with an explanation. She waits. "He was never going to stay, was he?" Ginny says. Not a question. The tone of someone confirming a thing they knew, and are now simply saying out loud for the first time. Not with me. Not in the way that would have. There was always going to be something between where I was and where he was." "Ginny." "The tent," Ginny says. "You were in the tent for a year. You know what happened every single day of that year? And I don't, and I never will. And I think that's the gap. I think that's just what it is." She sets the decree down, looks at it. Is he happy? Not the regent thing? Not the political? Is Harry actually happy? Hermione considers the question with the seriousness it deserves. "He's learning to try," she says. "For the first time. He's learning what it feels like to wake up and want the day rather than just survive it." A pause. "He'll get there." Ginny nods. One nod. Clean. The nod of someone who has decided something and is done deliberating. "Tell him not to be an idiot about it." "Constantly," Hermione says. "I tell him constantly." Something moves in Ginny's expression that is not quite a smile, but is in the same family. A short while later, the Joint Regency's second decree establishes the Weasley Gallantry Pension, long-term reparations for families who sustained losses in direct service against Voldemort. Structured as a permanent stipend indexed against ministry salary scales, the borough is added to the Hogwarts Memorial Charter as a site of wartime service. Protected status. No ministry instrument can touch it. Arthur Weasley reads the notification letter twice at the kitchen table. He takes off his glasses, he cleans them, he puts them back on and reads it a third time. He does not say anything. He folds the letter carefully along its original lines, places it in his breast pocket, and goes back to his tea. Molly, watching from the doorway, does not ask him what it says. She already knows, because she knows her husband's face. And his face says, "It's all right. We're going to be all right. That is enough for today. Hogwarts is not whole yet." The North Tower has scaffolding along its upper third. Goblin stonemasons working in the early light with the efficiency of people who understand stone as a thing with its own logic that rewards cooperation. The entrance hall floor has been relaid, the mortar still pale against the older stone, the repair honest rather than concealed. 3 corridor windows remain boarded. 2 suits of armor face the wrong direction because nobody has corrected them yet. The castle is not whole, but it is already, unmistakably, becoming itself again. Harry and Hermione walk through the main gates in the early morning, before the carriages bring the returning students up from Hogsmeade. The grounds are quiet, the lake is flat and silver. Somewhere above the Quidditch pitch, a single owl is making wide, patient circles for reasons of its own. The Board of Governors assembles in the staff room that morning. 12 members. 7 holdovers from Dumbledore's era who waited to see which direction power was moving before recommitting. 4. Appointed during Thickness's control of the school. One of them, a thin man named Rosier, no relation to the late Death Eater of the same surname, arrives 12 minutes late, having spent the carriage ride up, trying to remember everything he has done in the last 2 years. The meeting takes a quarter of an hour. Hermione presents the Joint Regency's jurisdiction over Hogwarts in 3 paragraphs. A wizarding school operating under a century-old ministry charter falls within Regency authority during constitutional reorganization. The case law is in the folder she has distributed. She then produces documentation on 5 of the 12 board members. Detention orders signed, punishments authorized, 1 member personally approving an unforgivable curse as a disciplinary measure the previous autumn. These 5 positions are terminated, effective this session, she says. The board's constitution is being reformed under the Regency Charter. The new constitution requires that a minimum of 3 members have direct teaching experience in magical education, that no member may serve with a documented conflict of interest, and that the board operates with full transparency. Minutes published, votes recorded by name. Rosier opens his mouth. Mr. Rosier, Hermione says, your position is not among the 5 being terminated. However, your attendance record for the last 18 months suggests you were not present for any of the decisions I've just described, which is either a significant coincidence or a deliberate choice. I'm content to proceed on the assumption that it was the latter. A pause. We'll see. Rosier closes his mouth. Minerva McGonagall receives the headmistress seal in the corridor outside the staff room after the meeting concludes. Black granite set in gold, the Hogwarts crest on one face, the Potter Granger seal on the other. The engraving so precise that the individual feathers on the Hogwarts eagle are distinct. McGonagall holds it in both hands and looks at it for a moment. Permanent, Hermione says, not acting. Your authority over the school's internal governance is absolute and not subject to Regency override except in cases of documented harm. She pauses, which I don't anticipate will be relevant. No, McGonagall says. It won't be. She closes her fingers around the seal. Her expression is the expression of someone receiving a thing they have earned over a long time, and receiving it in a way that acknowledges that, and finding the acknowledgement, after a great many years of proceeding without it, unexpectedly affecting. The greenhouse budget, she says, after a moment, has been tripled, Hermione says. Professor Sprout submitted a proposal years ago that was declined for funding reasons. I found it in the board's archive. It was a good proposal. McGonagall looks at her over her spectacles. You found a years-old greenhouse proposal in the board's archive? I was thorough. Harry finds the Great Hall in the late morning when the staff are at lunch and the students haven't arrived yet. He stands in the center of it alone. The ceiling shows late morning cloud, the enchantment restored and running, the light diffuse and honest. The 4 house tables are back in their positions, the benches straight. The high table is set but empty. The room smells of old stone and new polish, and the particular quality of a large space that is between events. Not empty exactly, but held. He thinks about 11-year-old himself standing at the entrance to this room, looking up at the floating candles, at the ceiling that was like the sky, at the 4 long tables full of people who already belonged here, and understanding for the first time that he might belong somewhere. He thinks about the Sorting Hat, saying Gryffindor and Ron cheering beside him, and Hermione looking just slightly privately satisfied. McGonagall finds him there 20 minutes later. She stands beside him and looks at the room and does not immediately ask what he's doing, because she is Minerva McGonagall, and she has been a teacher for 40 years, and she knows the difference between a person who needs to be interrupted and a person who needs to be waited on. Do you remember, she says, what you said to me in your 3rd year? About the Patronus? I said a lot of things in 3rd year. I was 13 and making significant mistakes on a regular basis. You said, after the first failed attempt, you said, Professor, am I ever going to be capable of the things people expect me to do? A pause. And I told you that the only expectations that matter are the ones I set for myself. I meant it when I said it. She looks at the room. I mean it considerably more now. A pause. I would have appreciated a warning, Harry. There wasn't time. There never is, with you. She lets that sit for a moment. What do you need from this school? He thinks about it. Not quickly, he actually thinks about it the way he has learned to think about things in the last year. Properly, without rushing to the first answer that presents itself. For it to be what it was supposed to be, he says, before the politics and the blood prejudice, and the years when it was used as a weapon against its own students, I want first years to walk through that door and feel safe, just safe, without needing to qualify for it. McGonagall is quiet. Then we build that, she says. The Sorting Hat's new instruction is delivered in writing, signed by both regents, witnessed by McGonagall. The Hat reads it once. Then it reads it again, which is unusual for an object that contains 1,000 years of accumulated magical wisdom and rarely needs to read anything twice. Then it says, in the voice it uses when it is talking to the room rather than to a particular head, "Took long enough." Peeves receives his contract on a quiet weekday, delivered by McGonagall, which Peeves finds suspicious, backed by Harry, which he finds bewildering, and explained in precise detail by Hermione, which he finds against all precedent reasonable. Chief prankster in residence, defined duties, defined limits, a salary paid in goblin entertainment vouchers, the exact nature of which takes Hermione the better part of an hour to negotiate with Gringotts, and which she declines to specify publicly. Peeves signs the contract with a quill he steals from Hermione's bag in the process of signing, which she clocks immediately and retrieves without comment. He behaves reasonably for 19 days. It is the longest anyone at Hogwarts can remember. The Wizengamot courtroom has better history now. A single week is not long enough to fully displace what happened in this room across decades of show trials and sanctioned cruelty. But the Snape hearing did something to the air in here. Rooms absorb what happens in them. This one absorbed something different recently, and has not yet returned to its previous temperature. Hermione intends to make that permanent. 12 families. Their advocates arrive first. 6 of them. Expensive robes, the composure of people paid to remain composed, who have spent the last few days constructing arguments they believe are sound. They arrange themselves at the left table with the efficiency of professionals who have done this before, and expect to do it again. They have prepared 3 arguments: the illegality of the Regency, the outdatedness of an old statute governing war reparations and criminal asset redistribution, and the presumption of innocence. Hermione lets them settle, lets the chamber fill. Wizengamot members in their tiered seats, press in the gallery, ministry observers along the back wall. Then she stands. My name is Hermione Jean Potter Granger. I am the High Regent of Wizarding Britain under the Charter of 1294. She does not look at her notes, because she does not have notes. I understand the defense has prepared 3 arguments, so I'll address them in the order they're likely to be raised, and then we can proceed to the evidence. One of the advocates, senior, silver-haired, with the expression of a man who has won cases against considerably more formidable opponents, shifts slightly in his chair. The first argument, that the Regency is illegal. This has been answered in full by the Gringotts archival certification sealed days ago. The Goblin High Elder's signature represents the authority of an institution that has operated continuously for over 1,000 years under its own sovereign legal framework. Disputing its validity requires disputing Goblin sovereignty itself, which would breach the international accords this ministry has signed, and would result in the immediate freezing of every Gringotts account held by every person in this room. A pause. I don't recommend it. The advocate's pen has stopped moving. The second argument, that the existing statute on war reparations is too outdated to be operative. The Wizengamot itself was established centuries before that statute was even written. If we are establishing that legal instruments become inoperative at a certain age, I would welcome a motion to that effect, because it would be a fascinating afternoon for a great many of the people in this room who hold property and titles under instruments older still. Someone in the Wizengamot gallery makes a sound that is not quite a laugh, and is suppressed immediately. The third argument, the presumption of innocence. Yes, absolutely. I invoke it myself, as a principle, and intend to enshrine it formally in the ministry's restructured legal framework before the month is out. She reaches for the folder in front of her. However, presumption of innocence operates in the absence of evidence. What we have here, she opens it, it is a very large folder, is evidence. She goes through it for the better part of an hour. Gringotts transfer records, authenticated under Director Bracker's seal. showing financial flows from 12 family accounts to operational Death Eater funds across the final years of the war, documented completely and without sentiment. Dozens of witness testimonies collected under voluntary veritaserum, survivors of raids, former Muggle-born Registration Commission detainees, ministry employees now telling the truth about who gave them illegal orders. The personal diaries of Thickness's cabinet, subpoenaed under the Regency's Discovery Authority, which prove particularly instructive since people who believe they are on the winning side tend to write candidly. She closes the folder. If the defense would like time to review these materials before responding, we can recess. I've set aside the afternoon. She sits down. The senior advocate looks at the folder. He looks at his own considerably thinner folder. He looks at his colleagues. Then he looks at the ceiling of the Weisengamot chamber with the expression of a man performing a rapid and unfavorable calculation. He requests the recess. Hermione says, "Of course." The afternoon session takes 2 hours. The verdicts are not unanimous. 3 families produce evidence of financial coercion, payments made under documented threat, and these cases are distinguished and handled separately. This is Hermione's stipulation. Collective punishment is not justice. Each case is its own case. 9 families, combined assets, a substantial fortune in galleons, plus properties, plus artifacts. The redistribution decree is read into the record by Harry, standing at the chamber's floor in black and gold, his own wand at his side, his voice even and unhurried. 40% to direct victim compensation. Every family who lost someone at the Battle of Hogwarts, every person summoned before the Muggle-born Registration Commission. The fund is administered by a board that Hermione has already constituted, chaired by Kingsley Shacklebolt, because she trusts him and because giving him meaningful institutional authority within the Regency framework is both right and practical. 30% to the Hogwarts Reconstruction and Scholarship Fund. Muggle-born tuition, covered in perpetuity. The endowment is structured so that it cannot be dissolved by any future ministry government without Goblin approval, which means it cannot be dissolved, which is the point. 20% to the Lupin Tonks Memorial Orphan Protection Program. Housing, education, care. The first-named beneficiary is Teddy Remus Lupin, a few weeks old, currently in the care of his grandmother, Andromeda Tonks, who received the notification by owl that morning and who sent back a reply that contained no words, only a pressed flower from her garden, which Hermione has placed in the folder and which Harry has not looked at directly because he cannot currently do that and function. 10% to a newly established Goblin Historical Reparations Fund. This last item produces the only silence in the chamber that is not procedural. It is the silence of an institution confronting a thing it did not expect, from a direction it was not watching. Lord Greengrass finds Hermione in the corridor outside the chamber as the session closes, alone, his advocate not with him, a choice. He came to this conversation having decided something, and he came to it himself. A proposal, he says, the Greengrass family's Wizengamot vote, in favor of ratification. In exchange for, "I'm going to stop you there," Hermione says, pleasantly, "because the most efficient thing I can do is be completely direct with you, which will save us both considerable time." He waits. If the Greengrass family's financial records are clean, they will not appear in any future asset review. If they are not, if there are transfers to Death Eater operational accounts during the war, then no vote, however cast, changes the legal outcome. The charter does not contain an exemption for political cooperation. She adjusts the strap of her bag. However, a genuine vote for ratification, based on the merits of what we've built so far, would be both welcome and noted. The Greengrass family's record in education, specifically in funding the Holyhead Magical Primary School, that's genuine community investment. There's a conversation worth having about expanding that model. If you're interested. She walks away. Greengrass stands in the corridor with the expression of a man who came to a negotiation and found that the other party had already moved the table to a different room entirely. He is going to vote for ratification. She knew it before she turned the corner. That evening, in the Goblin High Elder's private correspondence to Director Bracker, "Watch these two carefully. They think the way we think." Bracker reads the note, sets it down, picks up the sword of Gryffindor, which sits in a place of honor behind his desk, and looks at it for a moment. Then he files the note in the archive, under First Pair, Ongoing. The diplomatic hall of the École de Beauxbatons was designed to impress, and succeeds. The ceilings are 30 feet high and enchanted with a perpetual late-afternoon light. the gold of southern France in autumn, warm and horizontal. The floor is pale limestone. The long table seats 40. At its center, a bowl of enchanted winter roses blooms and closes on a cycle of roughly 3 minutes. The International Confederation of Wizards emergency session has been convened at Madame Maxime's invitation. Bowsbottens as neutral ground, Maxime as host. The implicit suggestion that whatever Britain has done is worth the international community's formal attention rather than its informal alarm. Harry and Hermione arrive by portkey, which deposits them in the Academy's courtyard at precisely the agreed time. Not early, not late. Madame Maxime meets them herself. She is exactly as Harry remembers. Enormous, magnificent, with the particular grace of someone who has spent a lifetime navigating spaces designed for smaller people. She looks at them both for a moment with the appraising attention of someone who knew them as students and is performing the recalibration that this week seems to require of everyone. Lord Protector, she says. High Regent. A pause. You are younger than the occasion suggests. We've been told, Harry says. Come, the reception is already interesting. The diplomatic hall before the formal session has the specific atmosphere of a room full of very powerful people pretending to be relaxed. Representatives from the American Magical Congress, from Mahotokoro, from the African Congress of Magic, from the Brazilian Magical Council, from Durmstrang's governing body, translators stationed at intervals, ministry observers from 6 nations who are here officially to observe and unofficially to assess whether what happened in Britain is a precedent or an anomaly. Harry and Hermione move through the room separately, not because they planned it, because it is the natural result of being 2 people with different conversational purposes in the same space, each knowing what the other is doing without needing to coordinate it. The president of the American Magical Congress, a woman named Okonkwo Hale, who has held the position for several years, and who carries the specific authority of someone who earned it in the specific way that means it cannot be taken, finds Harry at the edge of the rose bowl, watching the flowers open and close. How old are you exactly, she asks. 18, she considers this. And you've issued more than 20 reform decrees, restructured a major bank's relationship with your government, dissolved a registration commission, and ratified a 700-year-old legal charter. In a little over 2 weeks, Hermione wrote most of the decrees. I know. I read them. A pause. That's either impressive or genuinely alarming. We prefer both. Okonkwo Hale looks at him for a moment with the expression of someone recalibrating a prior assessment. The Goblin Reparations Fund. That was voluntary. Her idea, I assumed. She picks up a glass from a passing tray. We will be watching the ratification vote closely. We hope you'll find it satisfying. We hope so too, Lord Protector. Across the room, Hermione is talking to the Mahotokoro Chancellor about magical education reform, which is the conversation she came here specifically to have. Mahotokoro's system of ability-ranked robes, the way it addresses different kinds of magical development, the things Britain could learn from an institution that has been operating for 1,000 years without the blood status framework that corrupted British magical education. The Chancellor is interested. Hermione is thorough. They are both enjoying themselves, which is the best kind of diplomatic conversation. The Durmstrang representative makes his move during the pre-session drinks. He is a broad man named Volkov, deputy head of the Durmstrang Governing Council, with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the largest authority in any room. The Charter of 1294 has no established international standing, Volkov says. Gringotts is a British institution. Its archival authority does not extend to the recognition of international governing bodies. Harry turns to face him. He has been quiet through most of the reception, which Volkov has likely read as diffidence. It is not diffidence. It is the stillness of someone who lets other people finish revealing their position before responding to it. With respect, Harry says, Gringotts operates branches in many countries, including 2 represented in this room today. Its archival authority is recognized under the International Sovereignty Accords that Durmstrang's own founding nation ratified generations ago. If you'd like to dispute that, I'd recommend raising it directly with Gringotts. Their legal division handles exactly this kind of dispute. The waiting list for appointments is currently rather long. A pause. They've been busy. He moves on. Volkov stands at the edge of the Rose Bowl and reassesses his prepared position. The formal session begins not long after. The Confederation's presiding officer, An elderly Swiss wizard named Baumann, who has chaired a dozen emergency sessions over 4 decades, opens the floor. The Confederation requires 2 things: a formal presentation of the Joint Regency's legal basis, and a demonstration of why the international community should extend recognition rather than lobbying for conventional British electoral process to resume. Hermione presents the legal basis. 20 minutes, no notes. The Charter, the Gringotts certification, the Wizengamot ratification timeline, the treaty provisions that make the Charter's international standing a matter of existing law rather than new argument. She anticipates 6 objections and addresses each before they are raised. Then Harry does something unrehearsed. He asks the Confederation to witness a piece of old magic. Hermione looks at him, not alarmed, simply noting the deviation, deciding in roughly 1 second that she trusts it. Harry raises his own wand, the holly and phoenix feather he has carried since he was 11. The Patronus comes fully formed, the stag white and complete, filling the diplomatic hall with a light that is nothing like the enchanted afternoon gold of the ceiling. Colder, more certain. Several representatives lean back involuntarily, not in fear, but in the instinctive response to encountering something genuine in a room that has contained a great deal of performed conviction. Harry speaks a message to the Patronus and sends it through the hall's exterior window, northward, towards Scotland, then produces a 2-way mirror and connects to Professor Flitwick at Hogwarts. The message arrives in moments. Flitwick's voice, slightly breathless with the surprise of it, "Received, Lord Protector." Perfectly clear. The stag dissolves. The room's enchanted light reasserts itself, slightly diminished by comparison. "This wand has been with me since I was 11 years old," Harry says into the quiet. "It is not borrowed, and it answers to nothing but its own allegiance to me. I'm not asking you to trust us because of a document." He sets the list of decrees on the table. "I'm asking you to read what we've done in a little over 2 weeks. If you find a single decree that privileges the powerful over the vulnerable, I'll step down tonight." Okonkwo Hale reaches for the list, reads, turns pages, reaches the Goblin Reparations Fund entry, looks up. "The Orphan Protection Program," she says. "The first named beneficiary is a few weeks old." "Yes. You're both keeping your seats," she says. "The formal recognition is not granted in the hall. It is never granted in the hall. That is not how the Confederation operates. It moves through committee, through correspondence, through the careful mechanisms of an institution that has learned to be slow, because speed in international bodies tends to produce regret. But in the corridor outside the diplomatic hall, afterward, as the representatives move toward the Beauxbatons dining room for the evening reception, the American Congress president falls into step beside Hermione. "The Muggle-Born Protection Act," Okonkwo Hale says, "when it's fully implemented, we would be interested in a formal exchange program. We have our own version of that problem. Different shape, same architecture." "I'd like that," Hermione says. "I thought you might." A pause. "How long have you been planning this? All of it? The charter, the decrees, the sequencing?" Hermione considers the question honestly. "I started thinking about what a better system would look like in my first year at school," she says. "When I was 11 and I read about the Muggle-Born Registration Commission in a book on ministry history and couldn't understand how something that obviously wrong had been allowed to exist." A pause. "I've had some time to develop the ideas." Okonkwo Hale looks at her for a moment. "A little over 2 weeks," she says, almost to herself. "We're not finished," Hermione says. The Scottish coast in late spring has a restless dark, the sea moving against it constantly, the horizon never fully settling. The cliffs hold the cold even when the days have started to warm. The farmhouse sits back from the cliff edge by roughly 40 yards. From the road it looks abandoned, which it is, or was, before a man who was very good at not being found chose it as a place to not be found in. The windows are boarded from the inside. The wards on the perimeter are the kind that don't announce themselves, the work of a caster who has had time to think carefully about concealment. The runic sensor array, Hermione's design, a dozen components placed across Britain by a rotating team of Sovereign Guard members, who were told only where to place them, registered the location hours earlier. The pulse was precise enough to identify sustained bloodlock mechanics, which narrows the list of possible casters to people with both the knowledge and the commitment to maintain something that requires a living magical source, feeding it continuously. Antonin Dolohov has been feeding it for over 3 weeks. Kingsley wanted to send the full Aurora unit. Harry said no. not because he wanted the confrontation alone, but because the bloodlock field responds to standard wand magic by amplifying itself. A dozen aurors with standard-issue wands would only make it larger and more dangerous. He explained this to Kingsley in 2 sentences. Kingsley sent 4 aurors for perimeter containment and trusted Harry on the rest. They approach from the north, keeping the cliff wind at their backs, moving without light. The farmhouse resolves out of the dark slowly. Boarded windows, a collapsed gate, an overgrown path. At 20 yards, the temperature drops by a degree that has nothing to do with the sea air. Harry feels it first, the cold of sustained dark magic in active operation, drawing on living magical energy and converting it into a field, the way a fire draws on oxygen. The farmhouse is the fire. Dolohov is the fuel. Hermione feels it a few steps later. She doesn't say anything. She adjusts the bag on her shoulder and keeps moving. The Auror team splits at the perimeter. 2 east, 2 west. Wands ready but not raised, because Harry asked them not to raise them until he signals. Harry and Hermione reach the farmhouse door. He looks at her, she looks at him. No conversation is required. They have been making decisions together in real time under pressure for nearly 3 years. He goes in first, because penetrating a bloodlock field with controlled casting is the operational requirement. And she goes in behind him, because she is the only person present who can identify the anchoring artifact by sight, in a dark room full of things trying to kill her. Harry opens the door. The field hits at the threshold. Not physically. It has no physical force. But the senses register it as resistance, the magical equivalent of walking into water, the pressure differential of moving from one kind of air into a different kind. The blue-white light of active bloodlock fills the farmhouse interior, sourceless, coming from everywhere and nowhere, casting no shadows because it has no direction. Dolohov is at the far end of the main room. He is thinner than Harry remembers from the battle weeks earlier, which means 3 weeks of feeding a bloodlock field has cost him significantly. He is on his knees, not in supplication, in exhaustion, with both hands pressed flat against the floor where the field's central array is inscribed, the runes carved into the flagstones in an unbroken circle, roughly 6 feet across. His face is turned toward them, but his eyes have the specific unfocused quality of someone whose attention is almost entirely directed inward, maintaining the concentration that the active field requires. He sees them. Something moves in his expression. Not fear, not yet, but the beginning of the recalculation that fear follows. Harry raises his wand. The barrier-breaking charm is not a flashy piece of magic. It does not produce light or sound. What it does is create a sustained channel through an active field, a needle through fabric, precise and narrow, that keeps the field from closing around anyone moving through it. Maintaining the channel requires absolute concentration, the kind that makes the caster unavailable for anything else, which means that while Harry holds the channel open, he is entirely dependent on Hermione to do what she came here to do. She goes in. The field closes around her immediately behind the channel's edge. She can feel it pressing on either side, the way water presses on a diver, not crushing but present, constant, reminding her at every step that the thing she is moving through is not neutral and does not want her here. The blue-white light makes everything look the same, flattens depth and distance, turns the farmhouse into a featureless box of cold radiance. She moves anyway. The anchoring artifact is not where it would be if she had built this field, which is the first thing she checks. Dolohov is not a theorist. He learned what he knows from practice, and practitioners develop habits of placement that scholars don't. She recalibrates, checks the field's density gradient, denser toward the north wall, and moves there. The artifact is behind a collapsed section of shelving. Obsidian, roughly the length of her forearm, a dark red pulse visible even in the field's own light because the pulse is a different quality, older, more deliberate, the heartbeat of something built to sustain itself. She looks at it for 3 seconds. She reads the rune sequence, the activation point, the configuration that connects it to the field, and identifies what touching it incorrectly would do: collapse the field inward and fill the farmhouse with compressed dark energy, killing everything inside. She identifies the correct approach. She takes out her wand, not the Regency's power or any of the things that have accumulated around her in the last few weeks. Her wand, 10 3/4 inches, vinewood, dragon heartstring, the wand that chose her in Ollivander's shop when she was 11 years old, and that she has carried through everything since. Confringo, she says, not shouted, not performed, said the way she says things that she is certain of, which is the same way she says everything. The explosion is contained within the artifact's own boundary, the specific result of hitting the activation point correctly, which redirects the released energy back through the construction rather than outward through the room. The obsidian splits, the pulse stops, the rune sequence goes dark sequentially from the point of impact outward. Like lights extinguishing along a string, the field collapses. Harry drops the barrier-breaking charm and goes to one knee. Half a minute of sustained maximum concentration casting has a physical cost that he is still learning the shape of. His vision clears in stages. The farmhouse is dark now, genuinely dark, the boarded windows blocking the coastal night, only the distant sound of the sea and the cold and the smell of discharged dark magic. Hermione walks out of the far end of the room. She has a scorch mark on her left sleeve from the controlled explosion, and her hair is doing several things simultaneously, moving with the deliberateness of someone who has just navigated real danger and is assessing whether she is intact. She is intact. Outside, the aurors move in. Containment, professional and fast. Dolohov, depleted and wandless, offers no resistance. He has none left to offer. He is bound and standing when Hermione passes him on the way out. He looks at her, his expression the gap between the world he understood and the world he is currently in. He calls her a name meant to wound her for her parentage. She stops. She looks at him with the expression of someone who has heard that word in various forms since she was 12, and has had considerable time to develop her relationship with it. The aurors are watching. The night is cold. Dolohov is exhausted and bound, a man who bet on a future that no longer exists and has run out of road. She settles on 2 words. And yet, she says. She walks on. Behind her, one of the aurors, a young woman, Muggle-born, a couple of years out of the academy, who has had that word said to her twice in professional settings and made formal complaints both times that went nowhere, watches Hermione walk past Dolohov toward the farmhouse door. She files the moment away carefully. She will think about it for a long time. Hermione's office used to be a room full of blood status files, floor to ceiling, wall to wall, the accumulated paperwork of 2 years of institutional cruelty, brown folders, ministry stamps, the bureaucratic residue of a system that had decided to make hatred into procedure, filing cabinets in 4 rows, a card index for tracking people across multiple interactions with the commission, people who had been summoned, questioned, detained, and summoned again. She had it cleared in the first week, every file boxed, sealed, transferred to Gringotts' archival custody, evidence, not waste. The card index burned, which she did herself, in the office fireplace the evening of her 23rd decree. What the room is now, a working legislature, long table, 8 chairs, the walls lined with legal texts requisitioned from the ministry's own archive, from Hogwarts' restricted section, from the Black Family Library at Grimmauld Place. 2 blackboards covered in her handwriting, frameworks, dependency maps, the sequencing of reforms that cannot be implemented out of order. Because law is a system, and systems have load-bearing elements that must be addressed before the elements they support. She works here from 6 in the morning until the day's formal sessions begin, and after the sessions end, Harry brings her tea at intervals, having learned that suggesting she stop working produces nothing useful, and that tea is a more effective intervention than argument. She is, by any measure, the happiest she has ever been in her professional life. She finds this slightly alarming and mostly irrelevant. The magical merit standard takes 11 days to draft. Not because the concept is complicated, it is the simplest thing she has ever written. 4 sentences saying legal standing in Wizarding Britain requires 1 criterion: the demonstrated ability to perform magic, applied equally regardless of parentage, ancestry, or blood status, but because law is mechanism, not concept. It is the specific language that closes the gap between what you mean and what can be argued in a courtroom by someone who wants to mean something else. She writes it 11 times. The 11th version is 4 pages, dense with cross-references, with 2 appendices addressing transitional provisions. It is elegant the way precise instruments are elegant, every component doing exactly what it is supposed to do and nothing else. She reads it to Harry early one morning. He listens without interrupting. What's the weakest point? The enforcement clause in Section 4. Someone will argue the definition of demonstrated ability could exclude squibs by implication. Can it? Not if you read the appendix. Will they read the appendix? No, she says. which is why Section 4 has a clarifying paragraph that makes the squib inclusion explicit without requiring the appendix. I added it this morning. Harry nods. It's good, Hermione. It's the minimum, she says. But yes, the educational equality mandate passes through the Wiesen gamut in a single session. A debate of under an hour, one reasonable amendment from a Hufflepuff representative about the implementation timeline, and a comfortable majority in favor. Afterward, in the corridor, the Hufflepuff representative, a woman of about 50 named Clearwater, no relation to the Ravenclaw family, a Wizengamot member for over a decade who voted against the Regency ratification, stops beside Hermione. My granddaughter, she says, is Muggle-born. She's 6. She's been doing accidental magic since she was 4. I voted against your ratification because I believe in elected governance. I want you to know that I still believe that. I also want you to know that when she comes to Hogwarts, she'll come to a different school than the one I was afraid she'd come to. And that matters more than my position on constitutional procedure. Your amendment was good, Hermione says. The longer implementation timeline is more realistic than mine. I was optimistic. Clearwater almost smiles. You're 18, 19 soon. Still. She moves on. Hermione watches her go and files the exchange in the category of things that are more complicated and more important than they appear. The harassment statute takes 3 drafts and a significant argument with the Department of Magical Law Enforcement's senior counsel, whose objections about the definition of blood-based harassment strike Hermione as procedural in form and personal in origin. She addresses the procedural objections in writing. The personal ones never get their scheduled meeting, because the senior counsel requests a transfer before the date arrives. She notes this without satisfaction. It is a data point, not a victory. The Squib Rights Act is the one she is most careful about, and the shortest, 2 pages, which for Hermione constitutes brevity, because the principle is simple enough that more language would only create gaps. Squibs are people with the full legal standing, access, and protections of any other member of Wizarding Britain. The systematic exclusion of magical children from the world they were born into, on the grounds of a characteristic they did not choose, is over. She sends a copy to Argus Filch personally. She does not know him well. She has spent years finding him objectionable in the specific way that people who enforce petty rules with disproportionate enthusiasm are objectionable. She sends it anyway, because the act is about him, among many others, and because acknowledgement is not the same as apology, but it is not nothing. He sends back a note in handwriting that has the careful quality of someone who learned to write in an era when penmanship was taken seriously. Lady Regent, I have kept cats for 30 years because cats do not require a wand to appreciate. I note that this is no longer the primary reason. A. Filch. She keeps the note, puts it in the folder with Andromeda Tonks's pressed flower. The cafe is called The Lantern. It serves good coffee and reasonable sandwiches, and has no idea that 2 of its regular customers for the past several months are actually British witches and wizards who believe their names are Monica and Wendell Wilkins, and who moved here from nowhere they can quite remember. Harry waits outside on a bench across the street, in ordinary clothes, no markings of office, watching the door of the Lantern, with the attention of someone who has learned to be alert in calm situations, because calm situations have historically preceded less calm ones. Hermione went in alone. This is correct, and he did not argue with it. One of the ways they have learned to work identifying the things that belong to one of them specifically. This belongs to Hermione. The reverse spell is hers. The explanation is hers. The moment of recognition, when it comes, is hers. He waits. 20 minutes. 30. He finishes the coffee and watches the door. Then the door opens. Hermione comes out first. Behind her, a woman in her late 40s, with Hermione's eyes and the expression of someone whose world has just been fundamentally reorganized, and who is still inside the reorganization. Behind them, a man, the same age, the same bewildered quality, reaching for his wife's hand without looking at it, because looking at it would require looking away from his daughter. Hermione's mother sees Harry on the bench across the street. She has never met him before and knows exactly who he is. She looks at him with the assessing directness of a woman who has spent 20 years evaluating the things her daughter puts her trust in. Then, she turns back to Hermione and puts both arms around her daughter and holds on with the force of someone recovering something they did not know they had lost. Harry watches this from the bench across the street. He thinks about Privet Drive, the particular quality of a house where the people in it are related to you, and the connection produces obligation without warmth. He thinks about what warmth actually feels like now that he knows it. The Burrow, the Granger's house back home in Oxford. The weeks between the war and now when he understood for the first time what it felt like to be in a place that wanted him there. He thinks about the family he is building. He says nothing because there is nothing to say. The moment across the street is already complete without him. Emma Granger, over her daughter's shoulder, finds Harry's eyes across the street. She mouths 2 words. Thank you. He shakes his head once. Small. Clear. She did this. Emma looks at him for a moment longer. Then she closes her eyes and holds her daughter, and the Melbourne afternoon continues around them, ordinary and golden and entirely unaware. Nearly a month has passed since the vow at Gringotts. The ratification vote is tomorrow. The Sovereign Guard's founding address takes place that final morning, before sunrise gives way to full daylight, in the ministry's main briefing chamber. Several hundred applicants, the first class admitted under the new charter, without a blood status filter, so the room looks different from every Aurora briefing that has taken place here before it. Harry stands at the front without notes. He is not a natural orator, in the way that people who enjoy being heard are natural orators. He is something more specific, a person who says what he means because he has learned that the alternative wastes time that could be spent on the actual problem. The Aurora Corps has existed in various forms for over 200 years. He says, in that time it has been many things, some of them good, some of them not. What it is going to be now is different from what it has been, and I want to be direct about what that means, because you deserve to know what you've signed up for. The room is very quiet. You are not signing up to serve me. You are not signing up to serve the Regency. You are signing up to serve the people. Every person in Wizarding Britain, regardless of blood, regardless of birth, regardless of what the last 20 years of ministry policy said about their worth. That is the job. If that is not what you came here for, the door is still open. Nobody moves. The qualification standard is changing in one specific way. Every Aurora candidate will produce a Patronus before they are commissioned. He pauses. Not because it is required for the work. Some of you will spend your careers doing things that never require a Patronus charm. I'm requiring it because a Patronus requires you to find something worth fighting for, something real, something yours, not the ministry's and not mine. If you cannot find it, you are not ready to carry a wand in the name of this institution. If you can find it, then whatever else you face, you know where your ground is. He looks at the room. Find your ground, he says. Then come back here and build something on it. The werewolf and magical being classification reform is signed that same morning. The decree is 11 pages, which for a document fundamentally about one thing, that people are people, reflects the volume of legislation that must be amended, repealed, or restructured to make that principle operative rather than aspirational. The final version has been reviewed by representatives of the werewolf community, by the Centaur Liaison Forense agreed to facilitate, and by the House Elf Advocacy Group Hermione established during her years at school, which has waited a long time for this exact conversation. A copy goes to Hagrid by Owl. Special delivery, reliable and fast. Hagrid's reply arrives within hours, the parchment damp in several places, the handwriting less legible than usual for the first 3 lines before it stabilizes. Dear Harry and Hermione, I don't have the words for this properly, but I have been trying to find them for hours now. You didn't have to do this. You did it anyway. That's who you've always been. I am so very proud of you both. Your friend, always, Rubeus Hagrid. P.S. I made rock cakes to celebrate, and they came out better than usual, which I am choosing to take as a sign. Harry reads the letter at his desk. He folds it along its original lines and puts it in his breast pocket. He does not say anything about it to anyone. Neville Longbottom comes to the Regency offices on an afternoon a few days before the vote, wearing his best set of robes, which tells Harry something. Neville dresses deliberately for things he has thought about. Harry offers him a chair. Neville sits, hands on his knees, looking at Harry directly, a thing he learned to do over the years through experiences that would have taught most people to look away. The guard, Harry says. Yeah. Neville nods. I wanted to come and tell you myself rather than send a letter. You're not taking it. I'm not taking it. A pause. Professor Sprout is retiring at the end of next year. She asked me a while ago, before everything, if I would consider coming back to Hogwarts, And I said yes then, and I'm still saying yes now. He looks at his hands. I killed a Horcrux with a sword. I think that covers my heroism quota for one lifetime. Neville, I know what you're going to say. I'm not going to say anything. I think you should go to Hogwarts. You're going to be an extraordinary teacher. You're patient and precise, and you actually like people, which turns out to matter more than I understood when I was 11. Harry pauses. Also, McGonagall is being very intense about the greenhouse budget, and having you on site to deal with it directly will save everyone a significant amount of correspondence. Neville laughs, surprised into it. She sent me 4 letters about the greenhouse budget in 2 weeks. She sent me 2. I think you're the actual target. They sit for a while after that, not talking about anything in particular, in the easy silence of 2 people who survived the same things and don't need to reference them directly to feel the weight of what they share. Before he leaves, Neville stops at the door. Hogwarts is going to be good. What you and Hermione have done with it, the board, the sorting, the curriculum, the students coming next year aren't coming to the place we came to. He pauses. I think about that a lot, that there are kids right now who are going to come to Hogwarts and just learn, without the other stuff. He stops. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. The door closes. Harry sits alone in the office for a moment, then he picks up the next document on his desk and gets back to work. The night before the vote, the Regency's main chamber, late, the hour when London outside has mostly gone quiet. The fire has been going since early evening, and is at the comfortable stage. Not roaring, steady, the kind of fire that a room organizes itself around without anyone deciding that it should. Harry is in the chair to the left of the fireplace, with the first intake Sovereign Guard application files in his lap. Several hundred of them, which he has been working through individually, because Hermione told him he didn't need to, and he told her he wanted to know who they were, actually were, not as a cohort but as people. And she looked at him for a moment and said nothing further about it. Hermione is in the chair to the right, with tomorrow's session agenda and 3 supplementary documents, annotated in 2 colors, a third reserved for the points she anticipates requiring real-time response. The room is quiet except for the fire and the occasional sound of a page turning. Are you nervous about tomorrow? Hermione asks, not looking up from the agenda. A little, Harry says. You? A pause. No. Then, that's not true. Yes. He looks across at her. She is reading the same paragraph she was reading when she asked the question, which means she is not actually reading it. If they vote against us, he says, then we go to Hogwarts. She turns a page. McGonagall has already said we can have the cottage on the east grounds. I looked it up. It's a very good cottage. Stone construction, original to one of the castle's earliest expansions, 2 fireplaces, a garden that gets morning light. A pause. I was thorough. Of course you looked up the cottage. I wanted to know what our options were. The fire settles. Outside the ministry windows, London is doing what London does late on an ordinary weeknight. Buses, pedestrians, the ordinary machinery of a city that does not know it is operating alongside an older world that is in the process of becoming something different. Hermione. Whatever happens tomorrow. He sets the application files on the side table and looks at the fire. The last several weeks have been the first weeks of my life when I woke up every morning knowing what I was there for. Not what I was supposed to do, not what someone needed from me, what I was actually there for. She looks up then, the fire is between them, low and steady. She has a red annotation pen in her hand that she has stopped using. She looks at him across the fire, with the expression of someone who has known another person for a very long time, and keeps finding, in small moments like this, one that the knowing goes further than she has previously measured. Me too, she says. The fire crackles once and settles again. She goes back to the agenda. He picks up the application files. The red pen moves. Outside, London continues. Tomorrow, the vote. Tonight, 2 people in chairs by a fire, doing the work, in a silence that has no distance in it. The Wisengamot chamber is full in a way it has not been full before. Every seat occupied. The gallery above packed 3 rows deep. Reporters, ministry staff, observers from 6 international delegations who stayed after the Confederation summit specifically for this. McGonagall brought the 5th, 6th, and 7th years by supervised flu early that morning. They fill the upper gallery in their Hogwarts robes, every house, every blood status, sitting beside each other in the particular proximity of people who are watching something they will describe to their children. Hermione's innovation: the vote will be recorded by name and published in full before the end of the day. Every member of the Wizengamot will cast their vote publicly, on record, in their own voice. No abstentions accepted, no sealed ballots, no capacity for revision of position once the transcript is distributed. This produces, in the hour before the session, a specific quality of preparation among the chamber's members. The preparation of people who know that what they are about to say will exist permanently, and who are making their final adjustments accordingly. The roll call takes a little over a quarter of an hour. The presiding officer reads each name in alphabetical order. Each member stands, states their name for the record, and casts their vote. The clerk marks the ledger. The Wizengamot's magical tally system, a set of scales enchanted centuries ago that has recorded every vote in this chamber since, adjusts with each declaration, the two sides rising and falling with the slow accumulation of individual choices. Clearwater, the Hufflepuff member who amended the educational equality mandate, votes yes. She does not look at Hermione when she does it. She looks at the presiding officer and speaks clearly and sits down. Lord Greengrass votes yes. He does not look happy about it. He looks like a man who has made a calculation and arrived at a result he finds uncomfortable, and has decided that the discomfort is less significant than the calculation. He votes yes, and does not look at anyone. 3 members of the Thickness-era Wizengamot, who retained their seats through the transitional period, vote no. They do so without visible regret, which tells Harry something about who they are, that he will remember when the next relevant conversation arises. The scales tip past the midpoint partway through the roll. The yes side descends, clears the balance point, settles. The magical tally has never moved dramatically. It has always been a gradual process, but the moment it tips past the threshold is visible to everyone watching. And the gallery goes very still. The roll call continues. Final count. A clear and comfortable majority in favor of ratification. The presiding officer reads the result into the record. The scales hold their position. The clerk closes the ledger. No applause. This is a legal proceeding, not a celebration, and Hermione designed it that way deliberately, because what is happening here should be treated with the seriousness it deserves, and because she has found, over the last several weeks, that things done without ceremony tend to last longer than things done with it. In the upper gallery, a Muggle-born witch of about 40 sits in the 3rd row. She has short gray-streaked hair in the hands of someone who works with documents, ink on the right forefinger, a callus below the left thumb. She was called before the Muggle-born Registration Commission the previous autumn. She was released after 4 days of detention. She has not spoken about those 4 days to anyone except her sister and her healer. She presses her hand flat against her mouth. She does not make a sound. That is the moment. Not Harry and Hermione at the front of the chamber in their sovereign garments. Not the scales. Not the tally. That woman, in the 3rd row, pressing her hand to her mouth and breathing. 19 years pass. The platform at King's Cross Station is exactly as it has always been. The Scarlet engine, the steam, the controlled chaos of families saying goodbye, and trunks being loaded, and owls expressing displeasure at the general situation. The iron roof lets the morning light through in pale columns. It is the first day of September, the kind of bright, slightly cool morning that this platform seems to specialize in year after year, regardless of what has changed in the world beyond the barrier. Harry and Hermione are not wearing their sovereign garments. Harry is in dark trousers and a jacket that fits correctly, which Hermione selected, his hair doing what it has always done, which is nothing that was asked of it. He is in his late 40s and looks, Sirius once told him, like James Potter with Lily Potter's eyes, and the additional quality of someone who has been genuinely happy for long enough that it has become structural. Hermione is in a gray coat, her hair in the complex arrangement she developed in her 20s, the wild curls escaping at the temples in the way that suggests the control is chosen rather than imposed. She has a notebook in her coat pocket. She has always had a notebook in her coat pocket. This will not change. Their children stand in front of them in descending order of age and ascending order of visible anxiety. James Sirius Potter Granger is 17 and starting his final year with the rangy, self-possessed quality of someone who knows exactly who he is and finds it sufficient. He plays Seeker because Harry did, and turned out better at it, which Harry finds quietly, genuinely delightful. Owl the moment you're sorted, Hermione tells him. Mum, I've been sorted for 6 years. I know, I like confirmation. James kisses her cheek, shakes Harry's hand in the way he started doing at 15. That still slightly surprises Harry every time, and walks toward the train with the ease of someone going home. Lily Minerva Potter Granger is 14, Ravenclaw for 3 years now, with the quality of someone who was sorted correctly and knows it. She was named for both grandmothers. Hermione had been clear about the Minerva and unapologetic about it, and McGonagall, when informed, said nothing for a long moment, and then said the name was perfectly acceptable. Lily has been writing proposed amendments to the magical merit standard since she was 12. McGonagall has been corresponding with her about them directly since she was 13. She hugs Hermione, then Harry, with the efficiency of someone with a train to catch, and follows her brother. Albus Remus Potter Granger is 11 years old and starting today. He has Harry's build and Hermione's tendency to prepare for everything, and in this moment is a boy clutching a textbook with a Quidditch diagram tucked inside it. Looking at the Hogwarts Express the way James Potter once did, according to Sirius, the look of someone who wants a thing so much they're afraid to fully want it yet. What if? Albus starts. You'll be fine, Harry says. But what if I'm in Slytherin? Then you'll be the finest Slytherin Hogwarts has seen in 20 years, Hermione says, and we will be extremely proud, and I will immediately locate the most relevant reading materials for your specific house and curriculum combination. Albus blinks. You don't already have those? I have reading lists for all 4 houses, organized by year. I prepared them when I was pregnant. That's, Albus says carefully, a lot. Your mother is a lot, Harry says. She elbows him without looking at him, the automatic precision of 19 years. It's her best quality. It's one of several, she says. Albus looks at them both, at the easy, unrehearsed coordination of them, the way they exist in each other's space without negotiating it, and something in his expression settles, not resolved, not yet, but closer to it. He hugs them both, one arm around each, and then he picks up his trunk and his owl, and he walks toward the train with the slightly too deliberate step of someone practicing being brave. At the door of the carriage, he turns back once. Harry raises a hand. Hermione mouths something. Probably compartment 6 has the best light for reading, which she mentioned at breakfast and which he definitely forgot. Albus laughs, surprised into it, and disappears inside. The train pulls out at 11 precisely. Steam rises and thins against the morning air. The scarlet engine rounds the first bend and is gone, taking with it 3 children who are going to school without fear, in a world where the Sorting Hat places students where they will grow, where the old blood status files are sealed in a Gringotts archive, where Teddy Lupin, 19 years old, an instructor at the Aurora Academy, the youngest in the Guard's history, grew up in peace and calls Harry on his birthday every year, without fail. Where Fred Weasley's name is on the memorial at Hogwarts in gold letters, the font larger, and George updates the Weasleys' Wizard Wheez's seasonal display of Fred's greatest jokes every autumn in Diagon Alley, and has a son named Fred who is 8 years old and already showing an aptitude for creative destruction that is considered a family trait, where Neville Longbottom's herbology textbook is required reading at Mahuto Koro and Beauxbatons and Hogwarts, and sits on a shelf in Hermione's office between her annotated copy of the Charter of 1294 and Hagrid's last letter, which mentioned that the rock cakes continue to improve, where Snape's name is on the memorial in silver, and the third line catches the morning light when the angle is right, and students ask McGonagall about it, and she tells them the truth, all of it, every time. The platform quiets, the steam clears, the iron roof lets the September light through in pale columns over the empty tracks. Same time next year, Harry says. Same time next year. He takes her hand. She doesn't look at him when he does it. She's watching the place where the train disappeared around the bend. The way she watches things she wants to remember accurately. But her fingers close around his with the ease of something done 10,000 times, and not yet grown less deliberate for the repetition. They walk back through the barrier together, into the world they built, into the morning, into the ordinary, irreplaceable, hard-won life on the other side of everything they survived. The platform stands empty behind them. The train carries their children north, toward a school that will not hurt them. That, in the end, is what victory looks like. Not power, not gold. Not the clean resolution of every wound the war left behind, because some of those wounds are permanent, and the permanent ones are carried rather than cured. And that is the truth of it. A child on a train, going to school without fear. The barrier closes. The morning continues. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.